Good afternoon. It's Pastor Dave Schreffler, pastor at Trinity Lutheran Church in Lemoyne. It's time for us to take a gander at the gospel. It's been a while since I've had a chance to do a gander at the gospel, so it's time to stretch our necks to see how God might be calling us through the gospel this week. This gospel is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, the 18th chapter, verses 15 to 20. Jesus said to his disciples, "If another member of the church sins against you, go and point out the fault when the two of you are alone. If the member listens to you, you have regained that one. But if you are not listened to, take one or two others along with you, so that every word may be confirmed by the evidence of two or three witnesses. If the member refuses to listen to them, tell it to the church. And if the offender refuses to listen even to the church, let such a one be to you as a Gentile or a tax collector. Truly I tell you, whatever you bind on earth will be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth will be loosed in heaven. Again, truly I tell you, if two of you agree on earth about anything you ask, it will be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where two or three are gathered in my name, I am there among them." This is the gospel of the Lord. So the title for my sermon today is Everyone Matters. Everyone matters. We hear that repeated again and again, especially in our society today. We hear these words uttered all the time. Everyone matters. Jesus makes it very clear in our gospel lesson that everybody matters. You've probably heard the story about the man who stopped going to church, and it was obvious, right? When we have our smaller churches and one person decides not to come, it's pretty obvious. It's like the shepherd who has 100 sheep and one of them goes astray, and of course he knows how many sheep he has, and he goes after that one that is missing, right? So the pastor knew that one person wasn't coming, and after a while he decided, it was time to go and visit this one person that had strayed. And so it was the dead of winter, and he goes to visit the man, and of course there's a fire in the fireplace. The man welcomes the pastor into his living room. They sit down. No words are exchanged, right? They aren't talking. The man and the pastor know why the pastor's there. So the pastor gets up and he looks at the fireplace. He takes one coal, one piece of wood that's burning, right? One coal, takes it out and he places it on the hearth of the fireplace, and he sits down. And in a couple of minutes, of course, that coal, that ember starts to go cold. And at that point, the pastor goes back to the hearth. He picks up that coal and he puts it back in the fireplace where, once again, it is just lit up, right? It's a very simple sermon that is done without saying any words, right? The man understood what the pastor was saying, and of course he said, "Pastor, I'll see you next Sunday," right? We can even make the point about how everyone matters even without using words, right? Everyone matters. But let me be clear, not everyone gets along with one another, right? For some reason, Jesus knew that people were going to have conflicts in the church. And I know that's hard for you to understand, but even people in the church don't get along with each other. I've told you repeatedly, or I've told my congregation repeatedly, that following Jesus is not easy. Following Jesus, if you are truly committed as a follower, is very hard. And this is understood by everyone. We can agree, every one of us can agree how hard it is. But in real life, it is hard to get along with everyone. And in churches, right, churches should have conflicts because it is hard to get along with everyone. Now, that might be hard for you to hear, but real churches should have real conflicts. And it's mainly because of our human faults and failings, right? That we, this sense of the ego, the sense of the self, that we want to be concerned only about ourselves. And so these issues need to be confronted for the well-being of the church community. And because it's partly that we all are trying to get along, that when we disagree, Jesus brings this up, this idea of reconciliation in this context. The only real harm that can come to a church community not is from conflict. It comes from what from not dealing with that conflict, right? Refusing to deal with conflicts, that's what kills the church. It's not conflict that kills the church. So we need to really work hard at dealing with conflict. So the text says today that if anyone sins against you, if someone sins against you, and in reality, we could say, I mean, that's an if statement. If someone sins against you, let's think about it this way: when someone sins against you, because it's going to happen. My friends, it's going to happen. None of us are immune from sinning, right? Paul says all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And if we believe that, then we know that we are all going to sin. No one is immune. You're a sinner. I'm a sinner. We have to deal with that. People are going to sin, and some of that sinning may be against you. Some of that sinning may not involve you at all, but it's going to involve the church. Sin is all around us. So we need to think about addressing conflict, addressing when someone sins against us, because it's going to happen sooner or later. So let me pose this example, right? Let's suppose that somebody comes to you and says, hey, did you hear that such and such, or I heard from such and such that so-and-so used the church credit card to purchase personal items, not just items for the youth group. How do you respond to that statement? How you respond is so important, as much as whether or if you respond. There's so much danger in passing along a rumor that you don't know if it has any basis of proof, except someone says to you, well, I heard that such and such did so-and-so. Gossip, my friends, is as much a sin as is misusing a credit card, according to the Decalogue. And again, if you respond, you should respond with patience and clarification. It's your responsibility, whether this rumor affects you or not, this sin affects you or not. The urge to pass along a rumor or to condemn somebody on information that is third hand is so dangerous to everyone in the community. How we respond to such concerns is just as important as if the person accused would have used your credit card to buy groceries for their own needs. So how we respond to sin in the community of believers is important. Jesus does not say, when someone sins against you, go to 2 or 3 people and complain about them. Jesus does say, when someone sins against you, go to that person when the 2 of you are alone and discuss it, confront it. Jesus does not say, wait for a council meeting and then confront the person publicly without warning in an ambush style. Jesus doesn't say that. Jesus does say, go to that person when the 2 of you are alone, sit down and confront the issue. Rumors and gossip do a lot of harm in a closed community like a church. We may like how it feels to go around and complaining to others, how someone has done wrong to us, but that is not, let me be clear, that is not to be our first response, nor our second, nor our third, nor our fourth. And Jesus says, if that person hears you, then let that person be welcomed back into the community. But if that person does not listen to you, then it's appropriate to get 2 non-judgmental, 2 persons who have no dog in this hunt. Let me be clear. Get 2 disinterested people. That doesn't mean people who aren't interested, but people who don't have a claim in this, right? Get 2 others to discuss the issue with them, right? You don't want to set it up that a person is ambushed by 3 people thinking the same way, right? That's what Jesus has said. That's what Jesus says. Whether the sin is against you or against the church, Jesus is interested, very interested in how we use our voice, how we use our anger, how we use our efforts to reconcile, because everyone matters. Everyone matters. You may have heard the story about the man who's stranded on a deserted island, And almost 2 years he's deserted on that island. And finally, a ship comes along to rescue the person. And as they're leaving the deserted island, the people that rescued the man look back and they see there's 3 buildings on the desert island. And they say, what are those 3 buildings? And the man says, well, that first building, that's the place where I lived. That's where I cooked my meals. That's where I slept, right? The second building is the church that I attended. And they said, well, what about that third building? And he says, oh, that's the church I used to attend, right? It's sad but true. Do you know how many Lutheran or Methodist or Presbyterian or you name it, whatever denomination, how many churches like that? There exists a church down the street with the same denomination that was built because someone couldn't reconcile with someone else or a bunch of someone else's, and they just went down the street and built their own church, right? We gather every Sunday, or we gather every Thursday, no matter when you gather for worship, we gather in the name of Jesus Christ. The name of Jesus is his reputation, it is his worth, it is his honor. And so we gather in the name of Jesus, and that means that we are supposed to act in a way that lifts up the name of Jesus, is worthy of Jesus, that embodies Jesus Christ. Whether we feel up to it or not, Jesus is not suggesting how we should reconcile with one another. Jesus is commanding us to be one with each other as Jesus and the Father are one. John 17, go look it up. Jesus does not want us to leave any one person behind just because we can't get along. We are called to gather in the name of Jesus Christ to ensure that our faith communities are places where people love one another and can reconcile with one another. Because, my friends, everyone matters to God. So, that's my gander at the gospel this week. I hope you have a good week. I hope this gives you something to help you get through your week. Remember, your faith is not the theologian you follow. Your faith is not what church you belong to. Your faith is your living, active, breathing, living out your faith, living out the gospel, loving God, loving your neighbor as yourself. Go out there and be someone's thankful today. God bless you.